Hello, this is Ryan with Better Tattooing. We got you. You requested it. Let's talk about transparent adhesive bandages and try not to get sued. All right. Okay, now that that's over with, I can clean this off very well. Transparent adhesive bandages. Now there's no names about this. We are not talking about any one specific company, but we are going to debunk a few myths and give you some information about using these clear things to cover your tattoo when you're done. All right. I thought this is kind of a bait and switch, so I'm like a little bit nervous about doing this, but we'll be all right. Okay, so what is a transparent adhesive bandage? Transparent adhesive bandage is just that. It's a bandage that you can see through that has sticky stuff on the back, right? Will usually come in strips or sheets, and they'll have their little perforation things through it. You end up taking that off, slapping it, and it ends up going on top of the skin, and you make happy clients, supposedly, right? Now, I am not an advocate for or against transparent adhesive bandages, just to preface all of this talk. I think that there is time and space to use them. I just don't use them very often. So, when we talk about this is just a form of aftercare, right? And this is all gonna be based on trauma. When we do a tattoo, what we're doing is we're traumatizing the skin, we're inserting a foreign product into the body, and the body is having to cope with that insertion and also heal the wound that is there. So when we are thinking about how that heals, more often than not we have an aftercare routine, right? Our aftercare routine is keep it moist, which I have an issue with. Don't pick it, and just kind of wash it, keep it kind of clean, right? The idea with this is that when we're taking a transparent adhesive bandage is that we're eliminating all of that and we're just allowing people to cover it and leave it alone, and that's it. You can walk away, and that's fine, right? But it only is acceptable in a certain number of cases, all right? Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about with this trauma is we're going to think about productive wounds. Okay. So productive wounds are any type of wound that you get that produce something, exudate blood, whatever, right? And transparent adhesive bandages are not actually recommended unless they're a very specific brand type, which I'm not going to talk names, that have absorption materials, desiccants that are located inside of it, and that's that. Now these transparent adhesive bandages were originally developed for clinical settings so that people keep eye on things that they need to, right? Like IVs, right? For an IV, we'll do this, whoop, whoop. An IV line will have windows. Transparent adhesive bandages will be placed over top of it so you can take a peek at what's going on. Make sure that they're not being backed up, they're not pulled out, they're not twisted, they're not kinked, and you can just keep an eye on it. And they'll make it as well so it's held fast without having to use a bunch of bandages, tape, and other things that people may not like. It's great, it's quick, it's effective, and it's very specific how it's used in a clinical setting. The other thing are gonna be diabetic foot ulcers. So when you're thinking about any type of ulcers on the bottom part of the foot, when you have these deep gaping wounds, what they'll do is they'll have to clean the wound, which is debriding it, right? They'll pack it with something and then they'll fill it. And when they put one of these over top of it, transparent adhesive bandages, it makes it easy to see when those things need to be changed. Or if they start getting funky, you know, if you leave it on for too long, somebody can get a very bad infection and die. So having something like this for deep wounds is great because it's gonna create an access panel where we can see things. Now, the biggest thing about using these for diffuse, the diabetic foot ulcers, is that they're packed with absorbent material. So it's not going to be something that is heavily productive. It is productive in a sense, but it is being absorbed by the products that are being filled underneath it. Now, this is really important to note. With transparent adhesive bandages without desiccants or any type of absorbent material inside of them, they produce these things that we like to call ink sacs, right? So these are non-productive. These are non-productive, not pro. Right, whoop. But productive wounds are going to be things like a tattoo. And you know that you've done something wrong when you see an ink sac. I think it's supposed to have a K, but I guess that people just like do a C because it's hip. I don't fucking know. When you see those in the ink sacs where you have the skin and then there's like an occlusion where things are going like this and it's filled with some gunky liquid, your body is trying to remove this stuff from it. And saying that this is good to keep on the skin is contrary to literally every medical professional who is out there who would give advice. If we have the body trying to remove something from it, it's trying to expel, excrete, and eliminate things, keeping a moist, damp thing on that spot is not good. Now, how can we know that this is true? Because people are probably going to lose their mind when I say this. What is the very first thing that people say that go along with healing a tattoo? It's traditional aftercare, right? No swimming. Right? No tubs, swimming, lakes, rivers, pools, streams, none of that stuff. You're not supposed to. Why? One is for infection, and two is because you're going to create an over moist space that is going to increase cellular proliferation, that is going to push some of the ink out at a greater speed than if it was just kept fucking dry. So why, when you're putting these on the skin, do you leave them there and let the tattoo swim? I've seen people pop them. I've seen people drink them with straws, which is absolutely mortifying. I don't understand why you would do that, but this is the day and age that we live in. So anyways, not to get off, that just made me so sick, I don't know why. Anyways, so when we start thinking about the actual application of this, right, we're wanting to keep the wound dry. Dry, boink. Initially, right? So for the first 24 to 48 hours, what we're trying to do to mitigate any chances of additional trauma to the skin or potential opportunistic infections is we want to keep it dry so we can establish a scab base, right? When the skin is wounded, and we have, I'll switch colors here because I've got a bunch of them. And we have a wound that's come in, and that's where our tattoo is and stuff. Once our body builds a scab over top of it, the chances of you picking up an infection off of any type of microbes, your microbiome that are going to be invading that space afterwards decreases exponentially, right? So keeping it dry allows the body to do what it needs to do to develop scab, platelets form, a bunch of other stuff happens in the skin. It's all cool. And then it decreases the chances of us getting that infection. Now, if you keep something wet for a very long time, and there is no measures of trying to allow the body to remodel in a very controlled way like you would with a diabetic foot ulcer, you just leave the body open to infection. And that's not good. So all you're gonna do is just end up delaying the actual healing by keeping it in a wet, moist environment, right? So if you are gonna use them, my tip number one for this, right? And let's do this. Tips for using transparent adhesive bandages. Maybe that'll be the title of this. Number one, use them day 2. So what do I mean by that? You get your tattoo done, just do traditional aftercare when you get meat pack or some type of absorbent material that's going to be pulling any of that stuff that wants to get out of the body away from it, right? Let it dry out. Don't shower, don't start your aftercare day 1 because it's already been cleaned. Like if you've gone to a licensed professional shop, they've been using high quality cleaners, hopefully, to clean and keep the skin not only before, during, but also after the tattoo. So when you leave the shop, it should be a clean wound, right? So technically you can just leave it alone. When you start day 2, you know that the tattoo is actually going to be dried out. It should have a scab bed that's been informed into the bottom part of those like dermal tissues where it's been damaged, and you're going to decrease the chances of you picking up an infection. So when you put it on day 2, it's going to stick better, you're not going to have ink sacs, and it's going to allow it for a better heal. Tip number 2 for this, patch test before using it, right? Before use. What we do normally at the shop is if somebody does want to use one of these things, which will go on day 2, we're going to have a small little square cut out, boop, boop, right, off of the actual sheet, and we're just going to take it and put it somewhere in their body. Usually we'll go inside arm or something else while we're doing the tattoo. You do the tattoo, you leave it on there. After the tattoo's done, you pull it off and you see if there's any type of reactions, redness, itching, or anything else. The person goes home, you do everything through the day. If they look at that spot where you've placed it on day 2 before they place it, there is an issue, then you have the alternative standard health aftercare that you're going to give them that'll ensure better health of the tattoo, right? simple, easy. It doesn't cost anything. I usually go in with the sheets and stuff, and I'll cut out a whole bunch of testers. You get like 100 of them, put it down there, last you a month, you're good to go, right? Number 3, what we're gonna do is low trauma, low interventions. Yes, I am doing this all off the dome. The less trauma that we impart on the skin, the less likely we are to need or require greater interventions. Now, we have to think of this, the transparent adhesive bandages, which is, I always thought about the TAB, that's my old website. Sorry. The less that you're gonna need to like try and help the body. These are nukes, right? This is for somebody who's got a big tattoo done, it's been exudating and it's super productive. They work a job that is going to open them up to a greater potential of infection, things like this. Or maybe they got a thigh piece and they walk all day. I'm a server and I can't sit down, I gotta wear tight pants, it's gonna be rubbing. Cool, using something like this could be of benefit as long as they aren't allergic, right? And as long as they started on day 2 to make sure that it's not gonna be productive and getting gross. So it can help, right? But if you go in to do just a dot on somebody, using something like this seems ignorant, right? Because you haven't created a space where the body needs to have a lot of help. On average, the tattoos that we do, when they're done effectively and correctly, and you listen to the body and you don't push them too much, you don't use all this numbing stuff and whatever else, you just let the body tell you what's going on with it. The amount of trauma that we impart on the body for a tattoo is less than cat scratches, right? You can think of somebody sitting for a 13-hour tattoo. I have done that with many people. I cannot think of somebody sitting for 13 hours of cat scratches. Doesn't work like that, right? The depth in which those things are going to be done and the amount of trauma that's imparted, if it's going to be below the bottom of the cellular layers of the, ECM or whatever, like you would get with a cat scratch, is so much greater than if you're just damaging the upper layer, bottom layer of the dermis, depending on the taper or needle that you're using. So you're not going to need a lot of interventions. If the tattoo is leaving the shop and it's dry and it doesn't look very red, and it's just, you don't have to use something like this. It's going to aggravate it. In fact, if there isn't a whole lot of reaction on the skin, the amount of aftercare that you need to do decreases, right? So low trauma, low interventions, high trauma, high interventions. If you've got somebody who's starting out the tattoo, they don't really have good technique and they're just making that sucker bleed like you wouldn't imagine, these might really be handy and helpful in the long term, right? All right, number 4, pickers. Should use. This is a big one, right? I have a couple clients who are self-professed pickers. They just got a little bit of OCD. Every time they have a wound, they pick. Putting something like this over top of it really helps. Because they'll end up picking at the bandage rather than the tattoo, which is kind of funny. So I usually give them a couple extra sheets or something to take home if they're going to. This is not very common, but I still do that. And then we'll go number 5, we'll probably stop it here. If you're going to use this, place it right. Correctly. I didn't know if I wanted to write it correctly. I was like, well. There's certain places that you shouldn't use these, right? So you should not be using transparent adhesive bandages in armpits, ditches, back the knees, groin area, any place that's going to have a lot of sweat coming out of it. That's really important, right? Because if you're going to have something that becomes productive, it's going to trap a lot of sweat in there and it's going to start pooling up and it's going to create a very moist, humid environment that's not good for your tattoo. And people will say, oh, it's breathable. It has gas exchange. Yeah, gas exchange, not water exchange, And that's different. You're not going to have mists flying out of it. There's a bunch of tests done, actually. I don't know if we put the article up on the website yet, but they're actually doing tests with a whole bunch of these products that have been released, and the majority of them have absolutely zero gas exchange. And there has been no tests, actually, for any of the products that I have been able to find commercially on the market, except for one brand, which I will not name, that actually has proof that there is gas exchange that happens. More often than not, these are just simple plastic films. Anyways, last thing to cover, transparent adhesive bandages. Skin tone matters. Okay, The glue that they have on the back of these things, the adhesives, are really complex. They have thousands of different things, ingredients that go into them to make them. And some of the products out there require humidity to set the glue, right? So if you have skin that sweats more, it means that the glue goes deeper. So this is kind of the biggest thing I want to put out there. The darker that your skin tone is, the more likely that you are to have an issue with using these. So you're going to you're going to have to actually modify the time on skin based on how long that glue can get into your skin, right? The darker that your skin tone, you have something that's called a transepidermal water loss factor. And what this means is that your body, because it has darker skin, it can absorb more energy, and it requires a greater amount of cooling just to stay, harmonious, right? Because if you're in the sun and you have dark skin, you can think about, a black car versus a white car. When you touch a black car, it can get very, very hot. Your body has to work to get rid of that heat, right? So you end up exhausting more moisture for that type of cooling, which will increase the amount of sweat that's going, which if you have dark toned skin and you use this, it will actually set the glue deeper in your skin for some brands. So it's really important to think not only time of year or skin tone or whatever, but if you do have dark toned skin regardless, you're probably gonna have to extend the stay time on your skin further than you would if you have lighter toned skin. So some people will say it's 2 to 3 days if you've got light toned skin. If you have dark toned skin, it's 5 to 7, maybe 9 days that you wanna leave it on there before trying to take it off. If you take it off ahead of time and you do not remove it correctly, and I have a ton of horror story pictures of this stuff, you can actually remove that melanized layer. I have pictures of people with dark toned skin that literally have a block, a sheet size block, where they have no more melanin. It's become an albino patch of skin on sometimes extremely dark skin around it. And it doesn't come back. And that's really awful, right? So you don't just want to go in there and get that stuff off. If you feel a lot of pull, leave that sucker till it comes off and just be safe, right? But that's why it'll stick a little bit more. Usually I'll say with people who have healthy skin anyways, and people who have dark toned skin normally have a better skincare routine than I would see on average compared to the very light toned skin that people come in. Their skin is already healthy enough. Using a nuke to go in and heal the tattoo, as long as you haven't traumatized it too much, is just ignorant, Anyways, that's that. I didn't say any names. No lawsuits, okay? If you have any questions about this stuff, hit us up in the comments. We can go into more depth about some of this stuff if you like. I mean, we can go into how the glue is actually set, what they're made up of. This is all widely known stuff that you can get online as well. So I'm not, pulling this out of me bum. Like, subscribe, do whatever, support the show. I don't know. We're just having fun doing this, and we hope that you enjoyed it. I forgot who had asked for this, but hey, there you go. That's Ryan from Better Tattooing, signing off.